Stop trying to fix your life. Stop. Every technique you've learned, every affirmation you've repeated, every vision board you've created, you've been assembling furniture, without noticing, you're holding the instructions upside down. There's an invisible ingredient flowing through your body right now, this very second, that's building your tomorrow while you sit here. Most people never see it. They keep hammering at the visible world, exhausted, wondering why nothing changes. But what if I told you that everything you want is already being created, just not by the part of you that you think is in charge? I'm going to share something with you today that will change how you see yourself and your circumstances forever. And I need you to understand why this matters so deeply, because you've been carrying a burden you were never meant to carry. You've been taught that transformation requires effort, discipline, constant vigilance, that you must fight against your nature, override your doubts, force yourself into a better life through sheer willpower. And this belief has created something inside you: exhaustion, self-blame, this haunting feeling that you're fundamentally broken or lacking something that other people just naturally possess. Everyone keeps telling you to think positive, raise your vibration, take massive action. But these are all attempts to manipulate the visible world. They ignore the invisible ingredient that actually creates your experience. And here's what most people miss: your subconscious mind is continuously, automatically accepting whatever you habitually impress upon it. It doesn't distinguish between what you want and what you fear, between what you hope for and what you expect. It simply accepts the dominant emotional conviction you carry and works tirelessly to manifest circumstances that match it. This means most people are accidentally creating their problems with the same mechanism that could create their freedom. Think about that. The same power that could heal you, enrich you, bring you love and peace, that power is already operating right now. But it's creating based on invisible ingredients only you can see and change. And here's the relief I want you to feel: you don't need to become someone else. You don't need to fix yourself or acquire new qualities. You simply need to stop impressing fear, limitation, and unworthiness into the only creative force you actually control, your subconscious mind. Everything you've been seeking externally is already being created internally, right now, based on invisible ingredients only you can change. Let me show you what I mean through a story. Imagine two architects hired to build homes. Both receive identical blueprints, identical materials, identical budgets. Everything is the same. The first architect wakes every morning and studies the blueprint, really sees it. He imagines walking through completed rooms. He feels the texture of walls under his fingertips. He hears his footsteps echo in empty spaces. He smells fresh paint. He impresses this vision so deeply into his mind that when obstacles arise, delayed materials, weather problems, contractor conflicts, he barely flinches. His subconscious mind has already accepted the completed home as inevitable, so it guides him effortlessly around obstacles. Solutions appear. The right people show up. Things work out in ways he couldn't have planned consciously. The second architect also wants to build. He has the same blueprint, same materials, same opportunity. But each morning, he studies everything that could go wrong. He imagines foundations cracking, budgets spiraling out of control, inspectors rejecting his work. He lies awake at night rehearsing disaster. And he doesn't realize he's also impressing a blueprint into the same creative force, but one of failure. His subconscious mind, loyal and impersonal, begins arranging circumstances that match his dominant mental impression. The materials he needs go missing. The weather turns at the worst possible time. Contractors quit unexpectedly. Everything he feared comes to pass. Same creative power, same raw materials, different invisible ingredient. Now here's what most people miss about this story, and it's the part that will change how you see your own life. Neither architect was unusual. Neither was especially gifted or cursed. They simply used the same subconscious mind in opposite directions. One impressed success, the other impressed failure, and their subconscious mind, which doesn't care about their happiness or suffering, faithfully created circumstances to match what was impressed upon it. You have this same architect working inside you right now. While you go about your day, while you sleep at night, there's an invisible force taking your habitual thoughts, your dominant feelings, your unconscious assumptions, and building a world that matches them. Not the world you say you want. Not the world you hope for when you're trying to be positive, but the world that matches what you're actually, consistently, emotionally impressing into your subconscious mind. Let me tell you about a man I once counseled. He came to me terrified of his own success. Every time his business expanded, he'd sabotage it. New opportunities would appear, genuine opportunities, and he'd find reasons to decline them. At first I thought he lacked confidence, but as we talked, something else emerged. When he was 7 years old, his father, a failed businessman who'd lost everything, sat him down and said, "Men in our family aren't meant to be rich. We're workers, not owners. You remember that?" That single sentence, impressed into a child's subconscious at a moment of vulnerability, became an invisible ingredient in every decision he made for 40 years. 40 years. His conscious mind wanted wealth. He read books about success. He worked hard. He tried. But his subconscious mind was faithfully creating circumstances that matched his father's words. Not because he was weak. Not because he lacked potential. Because his subconscious mind doesn't argue, it accepts and creates. We didn't work on his confidence. We didn't work on his business skills. We worked on impressing a new blueprint. I am designed for abundance. Wealth flows to me naturally. Success is my birthright. He didn't believe it at first. How could he? But he felt it. He practiced feeling it. And feeling is the secret. Within 6 months, the self-sabotage stopped. Opportunities he would have rejected, he accepted. The invisible ingredient changed, and so did everything visible. But let me tell you what happened during those 6 months, because this is where the real teaching lives. The first week, nothing changed externally. He still had the same business, same challenges, same financial situation, and he almost quit. He said to me, "I'm doing the practice, I'm imagining abundance, but nothing's happening." And I told him something I want you to hear. The invisible always precedes the visible. Seeds grow underground before they break the surface. Your subconscious is rearranging circumstances you cannot see. Trust the process. The second week, something small happened. A client he thought he'd lost called him back. Not a huge deal, but unusual. He almost dismissed it as coincidence, but I asked him to notice it, to see it as evidence that his subconscious was responding to the new impression. Because your subconscious communicates through circumstances, it speaks the language of events, people, opportunities. When you impress abundance, it creates abundant circumstances. When you impress lack, it creates scarce circumstances. By the third week, he noticed something stranger. He was making different decisions without consciously trying to. A networking event he would normally avoid, he attended. A price he would normally lower out of fear, he held firm on. He wasn't forcing these choices. They felt natural, obvious even. This is what happens when you change the invisible ingredient. Your actions change automatically because they flow from a different assumption. The fourth week brought the first real test. A major deal fell through. The old him would have seen this as confirmation of his father's words, proof that men in his family aren't meant to succeed. But something had shifted. Instead of catastrophizing, he revised the event in his imagination. He imagined the deal succeeding, felt the satisfaction of it, and let it go. 2 days later, a better opportunity appeared, completely unexpected, through a connection he'd made at that networking event. By the 6th month, his income had doubled. But more importantly, his relationship with money had transformed. He no longer felt anxious checking his bank account. He no longer made decisions from fear of scarcity. The invisible ingredient had changed, and the visible world was simply catching up. So what exactly is this ingredient, and why is it invisible to so many people who desperately need to find it? Your subconscious mind is the invisible ingredient, and the first thing you need to understand is this: your subconscious doesn't care about you. This sounds harsh, but it's liberating. Listen to what I'm saying. It doesn't judge whether your thoughts are noble or destructive, true or false, helpful or harmful. It's like soil. Soil accepts any seed and grows it faithfully. Plant tomatoes, you get tomatoes. Plant poison ivy, you get poison ivy. The soil doesn't refuse the poison ivy because it prefers tomatoes. It doesn't say, "I'll only grow good things because I love you." It just grows whatever you plant. Most people are planting weeds all day long. Worry, resentment, self-criticism, catastrophic expectations. Then they're wondering why their garden looks the way it does. They blame circumstances. They blame other people. They blame bad luck. They never look at the invisible ingredients, the habitual thoughts and feelings they're impressing into the only creative force they control. And here's where it gets strange. Your subconscious is simultaneously the most powerful and most obedient part of you. It can heal your body in ways that baffle doctors. It can orchestrate perfect timing that looks like coincidence. It can attract exactly what you need through channels you never could have planned, but it will also manifest your fears if you dwell in them long enough. It's loyal to your dominant conviction, not your temporary wishes. You can wish for health while expecting disease. You can wish for wealth while assuming poverty. You can wish for love while believing you're unworthy of it. And your subconscious will create based on the assumption, not the wish. Because assumption is the invisible ingredient. Assumption is what you actually believe when nobody's watching, when you're not performing optimism for others. Let me give you an example that shows how deeply this runs. I knew a woman who desperately wanted to marry. She'd been single for years, going on dates, trying to meet someone, doing everything the dating advice told her to do, but nothing worked. Every relationship ended the same way. And when we talked, I asked her to tell me about her parents' marriage. She said, "My parents were miserable together. They stayed married out of obligation, not love. I watched them for 30 years, and I promised myself I'd never end up like that." Do you see what happened? Her conscious mind wanted marriage, but her subconscious had been impressed with a blueprint that said marriage equals misery. So every time she got close to commitment, her subconscious created circumstances to push the person away. She wasn't consciously sabotaging. Her subconscious was faithfully protecting her from what it believed was danger, because it had accepted the impression that marriage means suffering. We worked on revising her parents' marriage in her imagination, not denying what happened, but impressing a new truth. She imagined them happy, loving, fulfilled. She imagined herself in a marriage full of joy, partnership, ease. She felt it real. And within a year, she met someone. But here's what's important: she didn't just meet anyone. She met someone who challenged every assumption she'd held about relationships. And because she'd changed the invisible ingredient, she was able to receive the love instead of sabotaging it. Your subconscious is always listening, always accepting, always creating. The question is, what are you impressing into it? Now let me tell you the second principle that changes everything. Words without feeling are like seeds without water. They don't take root. You can repeat affirmations for hours, stand in front of a mirror telling yourself you're confident, successful, loved. But if underneath those words you feel unworthy, afraid, doubtful, you're impressing the feeling, not the words. The subconscious responds to the emotional conviction beneath your thoughts. This is why prayer works for some people and not others. Why vision boards transform one person's life and do nothing for another. It's not about the technique. It's about the invisible ingredient you're mixing into the technique. When you imagine your desire fulfilled and you feel the relief, the satisfaction, the naturalness of it, when you touch that feeling even for a few seconds, you've impressed it into your subconscious. Now it goes to work. It starts rearranging circumstances you can't see, opening doors you didn't know existed, bringing people into your life at exactly the right moment. But what if you can't feel it? What if doubt is too strong, or past failures haunt you? This is where most people give up. They say, "I tried visualizing, but I couldn't feel it, so it didn't work." But feeling isn't something you force. It's something you allow. And there's a practice for cultivating feeling even when doubt is loud. Start smaller. If you can't feel yourself as a millionaire, feel yourself with $100 extra. If you can't feel yourself in perfect health, feel yourself with a little more energy today. The subconscious doesn't judge the size of your desire, it responds to the feeling. A small feeling of relief is more powerful than a grand visualization without feeling. And here's something else. You can borrow feeling from the past. Remember a time when you felt the way you want to feel now? Maybe it was years ago. Maybe it was just a moment. But you felt confidence before. Even if briefly, you felt abundance before. Even if in a small way. You felt love before. Even if it didn't last. Take that memory, feel it now, and transfer that feeling to your current desire. Your subconscious doesn't care where the feeling comes from. It only cares that you're feeling it. I'll tell you what I used to do when I was learning this. I'd remember a moment from my childhood when I felt completely safe and cared for. My mother tucking me into bed. The weight of the blanket, the sound of her voice. That feeling of being utterly secure. And I'd take that feeling and imagine it connected to my adult desires. Financial security, loving relationships, meaningful work. I'd feel the same safety, the same peace, the same trust. And my subconscious accepted it. It didn't question whether the feeling belonged to the past or the present. It simply received the impression and created circumstances to match. This is the secret. Feeling is the invisible ingredient that activates everything else. Without feeling, you're just thinking about your desires. With feeling, you're impressing them into the creative force that manifests them. Now let me tell you the third principle, and this is where most manifestation teaching gets it completely wrong. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. They tell you to want harder, visualize clearer, affirm louder, but wanting implies lack. When you want something, you're affirming you don't have it. Visualizing from a distance keeps you separate from your desire. Affirming against doubt actually strengthens the doubt, because you're acknowledging it, fighting it, giving it energy. The invisible ingredient isn't desire, it's assumption. What do you assume to be true about yourself? Not what you hope, not what you wish, but what you actually expect when you're not performing optimism for anyone. If you assume you're unlucky, you'll find evidence everywhere. Your mind will filter reality to show you all the ways life is unfair to you. You'll remember the opportunities you missed and forget the ones you received. You'll notice when others succeed and convince yourself it's because they have something you don't. This is called confirmation bias, and your subconscious uses it masterfully. It finds what you're looking for, even if what you're looking for is proof of your own limitations. If you assume people can't be trusted, you'll attract untrustworthy people, or you'll interpret trustworthy people's actions as suspicious. Someone will be late, and you'll assume they don't respect your time, rather than considering they might have had an emergency. Someone will be quiet, and you'll assume they're angry with you, rather than considering they might be tired or preoccupied. Your assumption creates the lens through which you see reality, and your subconscious creates circumstances that validate that lens. If you assume you're unworthy of love, you'll create relationships that confirm it. You'll choose partners who are emotionally unavailable. You'll push away the ones who are available. You'll interpret acts of love as manipulation or obligation, not because you're broken, but because your subconscious is faithfully creating circumstances that match your invisible assumption about yourself. The work isn't to become worthy. You already are. The work is to stop impressing unworthiness into the creative force that's building your tomorrow. Let me tell you about a man I met who embodied this principle perfectly. He was financially successful, healthy, surrounded by loving family and friends. And when I asked him what his secret was, he said something I'll never forget. I've always assumed things work out for me. Even when they don't appear to, I assume there's something better coming. I don't hope for it or wish for it. I just assume it. That's the difference. Hope is future-focused and implies uncertainty. Assumption is present-focused and implies certainty. When you assume something is true, you live from that truth even before circumstances reflect it. And your subconscious, recognizing that assumption as your dominant conviction, creates circumstances to match it. This man told me about a time when he lost his job unexpectedly. No warning, no severance, no backup plan. Most people would panic. But he assumed something better was coming. Not hopefully, not optimistically, but matter-of-factly. He felt curiosity instead of fear. He wondered what the better opportunity would look like. And within 3 weeks, he received an offer for a position he'd never have pursued if he'd still been employed, a position that doubled his salary and aligned perfectly with his values. Was that luck? Coincidence? Or was his subconscious, operating from his assumption that things work out for him, orchestrating circumstances that match that assumption? You tell me. Because I've watched this happen too many times to call it coincidence. I've watched people assume health and heal from chronic conditions. I've watched people assume abundance and attract wealth from unexpected sources. I've watched people assume love and meet partners who seem impossibly perfect for them. The invisible ingredient is always the same: assumption, feeling, impression. And here's something that will either relieve you or terrify you. Your subconscious is creating continuously. Right now. This moment. You think you're only manifesting when you meditate, when you pray, when you sit down to visualize. But your subconscious is creating every single second, even now as you watch this. It's taking in the dominant tone of your inner conversation, the background hum of your emotions, the assumptions you don't notice because you've carried them so long they feel like facts. This is why casual thoughts matter, why the stories you tell about your past matter, why the way you interpret setbacks matters. Each moment, you're feeding invisible ingredients into the only creative kitchen that actually produces your life. Most people are meticulous about what they eat, but reckless about what they think. They wouldn't poison their body, but they poison their subconscious mind all day long with toxic mental ingredients: worry about money, resentment toward people who hurt them, fear of the future, shame about the past, and then they wonder why life feels so heavy. Now I know what you're thinking. This sounds overwhelming. If every thought matters, how do I possibly monitor them all? And here's the relief: you don't have to. You just have to understand one thing. Your subconscious responds to your dominant mental attitude, not every passing thought. It's the thoughts you return to again and again, the feelings you marinate in, the assumptions you carry like background music you've stopped noticing. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to catch every negative thought. You just have to shift the dominant tone. And that starts with awareness. Just noticing what you're impressing. Just catching yourself in the act of creating your own obstacles. I'll give you an example from my own life. Years ago, I noticed I had a habit of catastrophizing. Something small would go wrong, and I'd immediately imagine the worst possible outcome. A headache became a brain tumor in my imagination. A disagreement with a colleague became unemployment. A strange noise in my car became a complete breakdown on the highway. I was feeding fear into my subconscious constantly, all day long, without even realizing it. When I became aware of this pattern, I didn't shame myself for it. I just started noticing it. Oh, there I go again, imagining disaster. And in that moment of awareness, I had a choice. I could continue the catastrophic thought, or I could redirect it. Not to false optimism, but to a neutral or slightly positive assumption. The headache is just tension. I need to rest. The disagreement is just a difference of opinion. We'll find common ground. The noise is probably minor. I'll have it checked. But it's likely nothing serious. That simple redirect, repeated hundreds of times over several months, changed my dominant mental attitude. And as my inner world shifted, my outer world followed. I stopped creating crisis after crisis. Problems still arose, of course, but they were smaller, more manageable. And I noticed I was solving them more easily, attracting help when I needed it, finding solutions that appeared at just the right moment. The invisible ingredient had changed. The visible world was catching up. Let me give you another example of how powerful this is. Your body is listening to your mind. Not just your conscious thoughts, but the deep, repetitive patterns you impress into your subconscious. I've watched people heal from supposedly incurable conditions by changing the invisible ingredient, the dominant feeling and assumption they carried about their body. And I've watched people with perfect health deteriorate because they impressed illness into their subconscious through constant fear, worry, and expectation of decline. They'd read about diseases and immediately imagine themselves having those diseases. They'd feel a small pain and catastrophize it into something terminal. They'd visit doctors obsessively, not for treatment but for confirmation of their fears. The body doesn't create disease randomly. It responds to the blueprint you're continuously impressing. When you assume health, vitality, wholeness, when you feel it as true, your subconscious mobilizes healing forces your conscious mind knows nothing about. It adjusts your chemistry, your immune response, your cellular regeneration, not because you wished for it, but because you impressed it as already true. This isn't positive thinking. It's not denial. It's understanding that your subconscious doesn't know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. So when you imagine yourself healthy, and you feel healthy, your subconscious accepts it as fact and begins creating the biological conditions to match. I once knew a woman who was told she'd never walk again. The doctors were certain. The damage to her spine was permanent, and she accepted that diagnosis for months, impressing helplessness and limitation into her subconscious every day. She saw herself in that wheelchair for the rest of her life. She felt the despair of it, and her body responded to that impression by remaining paralyzed. But then something shifted. She met someone who'd had a similar diagnosis and had recovered, not through medical intervention, but through the power of the subconscious mind. And for the first time, she allowed herself to question the doctor's verdict. What if they were wrong? What if healing was possible? She began imagining herself walking, not hoping to walk someday, not wishing she could walk, but feeling herself walking now. In her imagination, she felt her legs strong beneath her. She felt the ground solid under her feet. She felt the joy of movement, the freedom of independence. Every night before sleep, she impressed this feeling into her subconscious, and slowly, impossibly, her body began to respond. First it was sensation returning where there had been numbness. Then it was slight movement in her toes. Then her feet. Then her legs. The doctors called it spontaneous recovery, a medical miracle. But it wasn't a miracle. It was the subconscious mind doing what it always does, creating circumstances that match what's been impressed upon it. Within a year, she was walking. Not perfectly at first, but walking. And the more she walked, the more she impressed the feeling of strength and capability, the stronger she became. The invisible ingredient had changed from helplessness to wholeness. And her body, always listening to her subconscious mind, created the biological reality to match. Now I want to be clear about something. I'm not saying that all illness is created by negative thinking or that positive thinking alone will heal everything. The body is complex. There are genetic factors, environmental factors, countless variables beyond our conscious control. But what I am saying is this: your subconscious mind has far more influence over your body than most people realize. And when you change what you're impressing into it, you change what's possible for your healing. I've seen too many so-called miracles to believe they're coincidence. I've watched too many people recover from incurable conditions by changing their mental diet. And I've watched too many healthy people decline by feeding fear and catastrophe into their subconscious day after day. Your body is not separate from your mind. Your cells are listening to your thoughts. Your immune system is responding to your emotions. Your healing capacity is activated or suppressed by what you habitually impress into your subconscious. This isn't mysticism. It's how you're designed. The invisible ingredient of your subconscious mind creates your physical reality as surely as it creates your circumstances. Now let me tell you about another layer of this that most people miss. Your subconscious doesn't just create your personal reality. It orchestrates synchronicities, what some people call coincidences or luck. Have you ever thought of someone, and they called you moments later? Have you ever needed something and it appeared through an unexpected channel? Have you ever felt drawn to take a different route and later discovered you avoided an accident or delay? These aren't random occurrences. Your subconscious is constantly communicating with the larger field of consciousness, arranging circumstances, timing, connections. When you impress a desire into your subconscious with feeling, it doesn't just change you. It sends out a signal that attracts the people, opportunities, and resources you need. I'll give you a personal example. Years ago, I needed to find a particular book for my research. It was out of print, rare, difficult to obtain. I impressed into my subconscious the feeling of having that book, of opening it, of reading the wisdom within. I didn't know how I'd find it. I just felt the completion of having it. 3 days later, I was browsing a used bookstore I'd never visited before. I felt drawn to it, almost compelled to enter, and there, on a bottom shelf in the back corner, was the exact book I needed. The only copy they had, priced at $1. Coincidence? Perhaps. But I've experienced too many of these so-called coincidences to dismiss them. Your subconscious orchestrates your reality in ways your conscious mind cannot predict or control. When you impress the invisible ingredient of feeling and assumption, you set forces in motion that work through channels you'll never see. This is why trying to figure out the how is a waste of energy. People ask me all the time, how will I meet my partner? How will I find the money? How will the opportunity appear? And I tell them, that's not your job. Your job is to impress the feeling of already having it. Your subconscious will handle the how. It's far more intelligent than your conscious mind. It sees connections you don't see. It creates paths you couldn't imagine. Trust it. Let me tell you about the most common mistake people make with this work. They impress their desire for a day, a week, maybe a month. Nothing visible changes yet, and they give up. They say, I tried it, and it didn't work. But impressing your subconscious isn't like ordering from a catalog, it's like planting a garden. You don't plant seeds and expect tomatoes the next day. You water, you wait, you trust the process. And underground, invisible to your eye, roots are growing, stems are strengthening, the fruit is forming. The same is true with your subconscious. When you impress a new assumption, a new feeling, it goes to work immediately. But the work happens invisibly at first. Circumstances are rearranging. Connections are forming. Opportunities are being prepared. And if you give up because you don't see immediate results, you're digging up the seed to check if it's growing. I counseled a woman once who wanted to change careers. She'd been in accounting for 20 years and dreamed of becoming a photographer, but she had no experience, no portfolio, no idea how to make the transition. She came to me asking how, and I told her to stop asking how. Instead, impress the feeling of being a successful photographer. Feel the joy of creating beautiful images. Feel the satisfaction of earning your living through your art. Feel the freedom of working for yourself. Feel it every night before sleep. She was skeptical but desperate enough to try. For the first month, nothing changed. She still went to her accounting job, still felt trapped, still had no idea how the transition would happen, but she kept impressing the feeling. Then in the second month, a colleague asked her to photograph his daughter's wedding as a favor. She said yes, even though she'd never done wedding photography. She borrowed a camera and gave it her best effort. The photos turned out beautifully. The colleague shared them with friends. She got 3 more bookings. Within 6 months, she had enough photography income to quit her accounting job. Within a year, she was fully booked and earning more than she had as an accountant. She didn't figure out how. Her subconscious orchestrated the entire transition through channels she never could have predicted. The colleague asking for a favor, the quality of the photos, the word-of-mouth referrals, all of it emerged naturally once she impressed the invisible ingredient of being a photographer. This is how it works. You impress the end result. Your subconscious creates the path, and your job is to follow the nudges, the intuitions, the opportunities that appear, even when they don't make logical sense. Now let me give you the practices. These are simple, but don't mistake simplicity for weakness. These practices will change your life if you use them consistently. The first practice is what I call the nightly impression. Before sleep, your subconscious is most receptive. The gateway between conscious and unconscious is wide open. The critical factor of your conscious mind is relaxing. This is when you impress the invisible ingredient most powerfully. Here's what you do. Lie in bed, close your eyes, and imagine a scene that would naturally occur after your desire is fulfilled. Not the desire itself, the aftermath. If you want financial freedom, Don't imagine money. Imagine the relief of checking your bank account without anxiety. See yourself relaxed, smiling, feeling secure. Feel the weight lifted from your shoulders. If you want love, don't imagine meeting someone. Imagine the ease of being understood, the warmth of companionship, the naturalness of affection. Feel yourself cared for, valued, seen. Feel it. Don't just visualize it. Step into the feeling of the scene. Let your body relax into the naturalness of it. Let your breath deepen with the peace of it. This feeling is the ingredient. This is what your subconscious accepts as instruction. Loop this scene gently until you fall asleep. Don't force it. Don't fight wandering thoughts. Just return to the scene and the feeling whenever you notice you've drifted. You're not trying to make something happen. You're impressing a new blueprint into the creative force that works while you sleep. Your subconscious takes over completely during sleep. It has 8 hours of uninterrupted creative time to work on manifesting what you've impressed. This is why the nightly impression is so powerful. I remember when I first started this practice, I was struggling financially. Every night before sleep, instead of worrying about bills, I impressed the feeling of financial ease. I imagined checking my bank account and feeling satisfied. I imagined paying bills without anxiety. I imagined having extra money for things I enjoyed. I didn't know where the money would come from. I just impressed the feeling of having it. Within a month, I received an unexpected payment for work I'd forgotten about. A small amount, but meaningful. Then a new opportunity appeared, a speaking engagement that paid well, then another. The money came from channels I hadn't predicted. My conscious mind couldn't have planned it. But my subconscious, working from the impression I gave it every night, orchestrated the circumstances perfectly. The second practice is catching the invisible ingredients during the day. Your subconscious is always receiving impressions, not just at night. Throughout the day, notice your inner conversation, not to judge it, not to shame yourself for it, but just to become aware of what you're unconsciously impressing. Ask yourself throughout the day, what am I assuming right now? What story am I telling about myself that I'm not noticing? What feeling am I marinating in without realizing it? The moment you catch yourself impressing fear, lack, or limitation, pause. You don't need to fight it. You don't need to force positivity. Just redirect. Choose a different assumption. Choose a different feeling. It's that simple. Not easy, but simple. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, I'll never find love, pause. Redirect. Say to yourself, love finds me easily and naturally. And feel that for just a moment. You don't have to believe it yet. Just feel the possibility of it. That small redirect, repeated throughout the day whenever you catch the negative assumption, begins to shift your dominant mental attitude. Or if you catch yourself thinking, I can't afford that, pause. Redirect. Say to yourself, money flows to me from unexpected sources. And feel the relief of that, even just for a second. Again, you don't have to believe it fully. You're training your subconscious to accept a new possibility. This practice is about becoming conscious of what you're unconsciously creating. Most people go through their entire day on autopilot, repeating the same worried thoughts, the same limiting assumptions, the same fearful expectations, and they wonder why their life doesn't change. You have to interrupt the pattern, catch yourself in the act, and consciously choose a different impression. The third practice is what I call revision. This is one of the most powerful techniques I know, and it's based on a profound truth. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between past, present, and future. It only knows what you impress upon it now. Time is a construct of the conscious mind. To your subconscious, everything exists in an eternal now. So if something happened today that felt negative, a rejection, a conflict, a disappointment, don't replay it in your mind as it happened. That's re-impressing the negative ingredient, strengthening its hold on your subconscious, and increasing the likelihood of similar experiences in the future. Instead, revise it. Close your eyes and imagine it happening differently. Imagine the conversation going well, the outcome being positive, the feeling being peaceful. See it vividly. Feel it deeply. Impress the revised version into your subconscious as if it's what actually happened. This isn't denial. This isn't lying to yourself. It's understanding that the past doesn't create your future. Your present assumption about the past creates your future. Every time you remember something, you're not accessing a fixed recording. You're recreating it in this moment. And how you recreate it determines what your subconscious uses as a blueprint for tomorrow. When you revise a negative memory, you remove its power to create more negativity. You're changing the invisible ingredients still living in your subconscious. I've seen people heal relationships years after they ended by revising the painful memories. I've seen people break patterns of failure by revising past failures into successes in their imagination. The subconscious doesn't care what actually happened. It cares what you're impressing now. Let me tell you a story about revision that demonstrates its power. I knew a man who'd been in a terrible argument with his brother. They hadn't spoken in 3 years. The original argument had been about money, about a family inheritance, and both men felt betrayed by the other. The man came to me carrying so much resentment, so much hurt, and I asked him to revise the argument. He resisted at first. He said, "But it happened. I can't change what he said to me." And I told him, "You're not changing what happened. You're changing the meaning you're giving it, the feeling you're storing about it, and therefore the future you're creating from it." So every night for a week, he revised the argument in his imagination. Instead of seeing his brother as angry and cruel, he imagined his brother speaking with love and respect. Instead of feeling betrayed, he imagined feeling understood. He didn't force himself to believe it had actually happened that way. He just impressed the revised version into his subconscious with feeling. By the end of the week, something remarkable happened. His brother called, for the first time in 3 years, and he wanted to reconcile. The conversation was awkward at first, but there was a softness there that hadn't existed before. Within a month, they'd fully reconciled. The man asked me, "Did my revision cause my brother to call?" And I told him, "Your revision changed the invisible ingredient you were carrying about your brother. And when that changed, your subconscious created circumstances that matched the new impression. Whether that influenced your brother directly or simply changed how you responded to him, I don't know. But I know that revision works. This is the power of understanding that the past is not fixed in your subconscious. Every memory is alive, being recreated every time you recall it. And you get to choose how you recreate it. You can recreate it with resentment, pain, and limitation. Or you can revise it with forgiveness, peace, and possibility. The choice is yours, and the consequences are profound. The fourth practice, the simplest and most powerful, is this one question. Anytime you face a decision, a fear, or a desire, ask yourself, what would I assume if I already had what I wanted? Not how do I get it? Not why don't I have it? Those questions reinforce lack. Instead, what would I assume? If you wanted confidence, you'd assume people enjoy your presence. If you wanted financial security, you'd assume abundance flows easily. If you wanted love, you'd assume you're worthy of deep connection. If you wanted health, you'd assume your body knows how to heal itself. Assume it now. Feel what it would feel like to operate from that assumption. That feeling, right there, is the invisible ingredient. Impress it, live from it, make decisions from it. Your subconscious will handle the rest. I used this practice when I was facing a difficult decision years ago. I'd been offered a position that seemed like a great opportunity, but something felt off. I couldn't articulate why. So I asked myself, what would I assume if I already had the perfect position for me? I'd assume I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I'd assume opportunities that align with my purpose find me easily. I'd assume I can trust my intuition. From that assumption, the decision became clear. I declined the offer. And 2 weeks later, a different opportunity appeared that was so perfectly aligned with my values and gifts that I knew it was what I'd been waiting for. My subconscious, operating from the assumption that perfect opportunities find me, had orchestrated the timing perfectly. This question cuts through confusion and fear. It bypasses the logical mind that wants to figure everything out. It takes you directly to the invisible ingredient, the assumption from which everything else flows. Now, let me tell you something important about this process. It's not always instant. Sometimes the subconscious creates quickly, sometimes it takes time, but it's always working, always faithful, always creating based on what you've impressed. So, when you start these practices, don't look for immediate results in the visible world. That's like planting a seed and digging it up the next day to see if it's growing. Trust the process. Trust the invisible ingredient. Keep impressing the right feelings, the right assumptions, and let your subconscious arrange the circumstances. You'll start to notice something strange. Coincidences that aren't coincidences. People appearing at the right time. Opportunities opening that you didn't plan for. Information coming to you exactly when you need it. This is your subconscious creating bridges between your imagination and your reality. Don't question it. Don't analyze it. Just receive it with gratitude and keep impressing. And here's something else. As you start to change the invisible ingredient, your outer world will resist it first. Old patterns will try to reassert themselves. People who knew the old you will try to pull you back into familiar dynamics. Circumstances will seem to contradict what you're impressing. This is normal. This is the old blueprint still manifesting its final effects, like a train that takes time to stop even after the brakes are applied. Don't be discouraged. This resistance is actually a sign that your subconscious is working, that change is happening beneath the surface. Keep impressing the new. Your subconscious is already at work creating the new, even when you can't see it yet. The invisible always precedes the visible. The seed grows underground before it breaks the surface. Your job is to keep impressing, keep feeling, keep assuming, until the visible world catches up with the invisible one. I'll tell you about a woman who experienced this resistance powerfully. She was working to impress abundance after years of financial struggle. She did the practices faithfully. Every night, she impressed the feeling of financial security. Every day, she caught herself assuming lack and redirected to abundance. She revised past failures. She asked herself what she'd assume if she already had wealth. And then, 2 weeks into the process, her car broke down. A major repair. Expensive. She almost gave up. She said to me, "I'm trying to create abundance and the universe sends me a huge expense. Obviously this doesn't work." And I told her, this is the old blueprint manifesting its final effects. Your subconscious is already creating the new abundance, but the old circumstances are still playing out. Don't let this discourage you. In fact, revise it. Imagine this expense being covered easily, unexpectedly. She was skeptical, but she did it. She revised the situation, imagining a check arriving, feeling the relief of having the money. And 3 days later she received a tax refund she'd forgotten about. It covered the repair exactly. She was stunned. And I told her, this is how it works. You impress the new, the old briefly resists, and then the new breaks through. But only if you persist through the resistance. This is why most people fail at this work. They give up right when it's about to work. They see the resistance and assume the practice isn't working, when actually the resistance proves it's working. The old pattern is fighting to survive. But if you keep feeding the new impression, the old pattern has no choice but to dissolve. Now I want to address something that might be troubling you. What about the bad things I've already created? What about the circumstances I'm living in right now that I didn't consciously choose? What about the trauma, the loss, the pain that's already happened? Here's what you need to understand. Yes, you created them. But you created them unconsciously, by impressing fear, doubt, limitation, unworthiness into your subconscious, without realizing what you were doing. You didn't know what you were doing. You were never taught how the subconscious works. You were planting poison ivy without knowing that's what you were holding. But now you know. And from this moment forward you choose. You choose what you impress. You choose the assumptions you carry. You choose the invisible ingredients that build your tomorrow. And here's the beautiful thing. You can revise the past and change how it influences your future. This isn't about blame. It's about power. The same power that created your current circumstances can create new ones. The same subconscious that manifested your fears can manifest your faith. You're not a victim of circumstances. You're the creator of them. And once you truly understand that, once you feel that power, everything changes. But I need to be honest with you about something. This understanding can be confronting. When you realize you've been creating your own suffering, unconsciously impressing limitation and fear, there's a temptation to blame yourself, to feel guilty or ashamed. Don't go there. Guilt and shame are just more negative impressions. They don't help. They hurt. Instead, feel relief. Feel empowerment. Because if you created the circumstances you don't want, that means you can create the circumstances you do want. The same creative power, just directed differently. This is cause for celebration, not condemnation. I remember when this understanding first hit me deeply. I saw how many years I'd spent creating obstacles for myself, impressing limitation, expecting disappointment, and I felt a wave of regret. All that wasted time, all that unnecessary suffering. But then I shifted. I realized, now I know, and knowing changes everything. From this moment forward, I create consciously, and so can you. Let me tell you about another dimension of this work that's equally important. Your subconscious doesn't just respond to what you impress about yourself. It responds to what you impress about others. The judgments you carry, the resentments you hold, the assumptions you make about people in your life, these are also invisible ingredients creating your reality. If you assume your boss is unfair, you'll create experiences of unfairness. If you assume your partner is inconsiderate, you'll notice every inconsiderate act and miss the considerate ones. If you assume your children are difficult, you'll bring out the difficulty in them. Not because your assumptions control others, but because your assumptions control what you perceive, how you respond, and what you therefore evoke. I counseled a woman once who was convinced her mother-in-law hated her. Every interaction confirmed it in her mind. Every comment seemed critical. Every look seemed disapproving, and her relationship with her mother-in-law was miserable because of it. So I asked her to revise. To imagine her mother-in-law loving her, accepting her, appreciating her. To feel it as true, even though her conscious mind said it wasn't. She struggled with this. It felt dishonest. But I explained, you're not lying. You're choosing which aspect to impress into your subconscious. Your mother-in-law is complex, like all humans. She has loving aspects and critical aspects. You've been impressing the critical aspects, so that's all you see and all you evoke. What if you impressed the loving aspects instead? She agreed to try. Every night she revised past interactions, imagining her mother-in-law warm and kind. Every day, she assumed the best rather than the worst. And within a month, the relationship transformed. The mother-in-law started calling just to chat, started complimenting her, started showing genuine affection. The woman couldn't believe it. She said, "Did I change her?" And I said, "You changed the invisible ingredient you were carrying about her. And that changed everything, how you perceived her, how you responded to her, and therefore what you evoked in her." This is the power of understanding that other people are, in a sense, mirrors of your inner assumptions. Not completely. They have their own consciousness, their own free will, but in your experience of them, they reflect what you're impressing into your subconscious about them. When you change the invisible ingredient, when you revise how you see them, when you assume the best rather than the worst, you change the entire dynamic. And often, mysteriously, they seem to change too. Or perhaps they were always that way, and you're finally able to see it. This is why forgiveness is so powerful, not for the other person's sake but for yours. When you hold resentment, you're impressing that person as an enemy into your subconscious every day. You're creating circumstances where they hurt you again and again, at least in your perception. When you forgive, you're not saying what they did was okay. You're releasing the negative impression so it stops creating negative circumstances. I knew a man who'd been betrayed by a business partner decades ago. The betrayal had cost him everything: his savings, his reputation, his confidence, and 30 years later, he was still talking about it, still reliving it, still impressing the pain and betrayal into his subconscious every single day. His life reflected it. Every business relationship soured. Every partnership ended badly. He kept creating the same experience over and over, because he'd never released the original impression. So I worked with him on revision and forgiveness. Not for the partner's sake. The partner probably didn't even remember him anymore. For his sake, we revised the betrayal. He imagined it ending differently, amicably, fairly. He felt the relief of resolution. He forgave, not because the betrayal was acceptable, but because carrying it was destroying his life. And within 6 months, his business relationships began to heal. People who'd seemed untrustworthy became trustworthy. New partners appeared who were aligned with his values. The invisible ingredient had changed, and the visible world reflected it. This is the work. It's not just about manifesting what you want. It's about healing what you're unconsciously creating. It's about releasing the negative impressions that keep generating negative circumstances. It's about choosing, consciously and deliberately, what you feed into the only creative force you actually control. Now let me talk about one more dimension that's crucial to understand. Your subconscious is not separate from the larger field of consciousness. It's connected to everything, everyone, the entire web of life. When you impress something into your subconscious, you're not just changing yourself, you're sending ripples into the larger field. This is why the practices work, even when logic says they shouldn't. How does revising a past argument heal a present relationship? How does impressing abundance attract money from unexpected sources? How does assuming health activate healing in your body? Because your subconscious is not isolated. It's part of an infinite creative intelligence that orchestrates synchronicities, arranges timing, connects what needs to be connected. Some call this intelligence God. Some call it the universe. Some call it the quantum field. The name doesn't matter. What matters is understanding that you're not alone in this creative process. Your subconscious is your personal access point to an intelligence far greater than your conscious mind can comprehend. When you impress a desire with feeling, you're not just programming yourself. You're communicating with this larger intelligence. You're saying, "This is what I choose to create," and it responds by orchestrating circumstances, people, opportunities in ways you could never predict or control. This is why trying to figure out the how is futile. Your conscious mind is limited. It sees a tiny fraction of reality. But your subconscious, connected to infinite intelligence, sees everything. It knows paths you don't know exist. It creates through channels you could never imagine. Your job is simple. Impress the end result with feeling. Assume it's already done. Live from that assumption. And let the larger intelligence handle the details. I'll tell you about a profound experience I had that demonstrated this. Years ago, I needed to be in a specific city, on a specific date for important work, but I had no money for travel. No way to get there that I could see. I could have panicked. I could have given up. Instead, I impressed into my subconscious the feeling of being in that city on that date. I saw myself there. I felt the satisfaction of fulfilling my purpose. I didn't know how. I just knew it was done. 3 days before I needed to leave, I received a letter. Someone I barely knew, someone I'd met briefly years before, was writing to offer me a paid speaking engagement in that exact city on that exact date. They'd cover all expenses. The timing was impossible to explain logically. But that's how the subconscious works when connected to infinite intelligence. It orchestrates miracles that look like coincidences. This has happened to me so many times that I no longer question it. I trust it completely. When I impress something into my subconscious with feeling, I know it's done. I don't worry about how. I just watch for the synchronicities, the opportunities, the seemingly random events that are actually precisely orchestrated. You can have this same trust. You can develop this same relationship with your subconscious and the larger intelligence it's connected to. It starts with practice, with impressing your desires faithfully every night, with catching and redirecting negative assumptions during the day, with revising past pain, with asking what you'd assume if you already had what you wanted. Do this consistently, not for a week, but for months, and you'll see the evidence accumulate. Small things at first, then bigger things, then things so perfectly timed and aligned that you can't possibly deny the power at work. And here's what happens then. Your faith deepens. Not blind faith, but faith based on evidence, on repeated demonstration. And as your faith deepens, your impressing becomes more powerful because doubt decreases. And as your impressing becomes more powerful, your manifestations become more obvious. And as your manifestations become more obvious, your faith deepens further. It's a beautiful upward spiral. This is the life available to you. Not a life of struggle and striving, not a life of hoping and wishing, but a life of conscious creation, of impressing and allowing, of asking and receiving. The invisible ingredient is always at work. The question is only whether you're using it consciously or unconsciously, constructively or destructively. Let me address one more concern you might have. What if I impress something, and it doesn't manifest? What if I do everything right and nothing happens? Does that mean I failed? Does that mean the process doesn't work? No. It means one of several things. First, you might not have truly felt it. Remember, feeling is the secret. Words without feeling don't impress the subconscious. You might have visualized, affirmed, done all the techniques, but if underneath you felt doubt, fear, or unworthiness, you impress those feelings instead. Second, you might be looking for results too quickly. The subconscious creates in its own timing. Some things manifest quickly, others take time. If you give up after a week because nothing visible changed, you're abandoning the seed before it can grow. Third, you might be trying to control the how. When you're attached to a specific path, you close off the infinite other paths your subconscious could use. If you impress meeting your partner through a dating app, you might miss the person sitting next to you on the subway. Stay open to all possibilities. Fourth, and this is important, what you think you want might not be what's best for you. Your conscious mind has limited vision. Your subconscious, connected to infinite intelligence, sees the bigger picture. Sometimes when a desire doesn't manifest, it's because something better is being prepared. Trust that. I wanted a specific job once. I did everything right. Impressed the feeling of having it, assumed it was mine, but I didn't get it. I was disappointed. But 3 months later, a different position appeared that was so much better aligned with my purpose that I thanked the universe for not giving me what I thought I wanted. Your subconscious is always working in your favor, even when it doesn't feel like it, even when the visible evidence seems to contradict it. Trust the process. Keep impressing, keep feeling, keep assuming, and know that what's meant for you cannot miss you, and what misses you was never truly meant for you. Now let me bring all of this together into a simple framework you can use every single day, morning, noon, and night. This is how you consciously direct the invisible ingredient that's creating your life. In the morning when you wake, before you check your phone or start your day, take 5 minutes to set your dominant assumption. Ask yourself, what do I want to create today? Not in terms of tasks or achievements, but in terms of feeling and experience. Do I want to feel confident, peaceful, abundant, loved? Choose one dominant feeling and impress it into your subconscious. Feel it now, as if it's already true. This sets the tone for your entire day. Throughout the day, catch yourself. Notice your assumptions. Notice your inner conversation. Notice the invisible ingredients you're unconsciously impressing. And whenever you catch something negative, redirect it. Don't judge yourself. Just gently choose a better assumption, a better feeling. This is training your subconscious to operate from a new default setting. In the evening, before sleep, do the nightly impression I taught you earlier. Imagine a scene that implies your desire fulfilled. Feel it real. Let that feeling be the last thing you impress before sleep. Your subconscious works all night creating circumstances that match what you've impressed. That's it. Simple but profound. Morning intention, daytime awareness, and redirection. Nightly impression. Do this consistently, and your life will transform. Not because you forced it to change, but because you changed the invisible ingredient that was creating it. And one more thing. Be patient with yourself. You've been impressing unconsciously for years, maybe decades. You've built up layers of negative assumptions, limiting beliefs, fearful expectations. They won't all dissolve overnight. This is a practice, not a quick fix. Some days you'll do it perfectly. Some days you'll forget. Some days you'll catch yourself hours later realizing you've been impressing limitation all day. That's okay. Don't add guilt to the mix. Just notice, redirect, and begin again. Every moment is a fresh opportunity to impress something new. The past is gone. The future hasn't arrived. You only ever have this moment to choose what you're impressing, and this moment is enough. I've been teaching this for many years now, and I've seen thousands of people transform their lives through understanding and applying these principles. I've seen people heal incurable diseases. I've seen people go from poverty to abundance. I've seen broken relationships restored. I've seen people discover purpose and joy they never thought possible. And none of them were special. None of them had powers you don't have. They simply learned to consciously direct the invisible ingredient that was already creating their reality. They stopped fighting life and started creating it. They stopped being victims and started being conscious creators. You have this same power. Right now. This very moment. The invisible ingredient is flowing through you, receiving impressions, creating circumstances. The question is only what you'll impress into it from this moment forward. So let me leave you with this truth, spoken directly into the part of you that needs to hear it. You are not broken. You've just been impressing the wrong blueprint into your subconscious. You've been planting weeds and wondering why you don't have flowers. But now you know, and knowing changes everything. You are not blocked. You've just been feeding fear instead of faith. You've been assuming limitation, when abundance is your natural state. But the same creative power that manifested your fears can manifest your faith. All it needs is a different impression. You are not unworthy. You've never been unworthy. You've just been carrying assumptions about yourself that aren't true. Assumptions impressed into your subconscious by parents, teachers, society, past failures. But those assumptions are not facts. They're just seeds someone planted in your garden. And you can replace them with better seeds anytime you choose. The invisible ingredient that creates everything is already inside you. It's been waiting patiently for you to recognize it, to trust it, to consciously direct it. Your subconscious mind is the most powerful creative force you'll ever encounter. And it's completely loyal to whatever you impress upon it. From this moment forward, you choose what you impress. You choose the assumptions you carry. You choose the feelings you marinate in. You choose the invisible ingredients that build your tomorrow, and your subconscious mind, loyal, powerful, impersonal, connected to infinite intelligence, will create exactly what you've impressed upon it. Not what you say you want, not what you hope for occasionally, but what you consistently, emotionally, deeply impress into it with feeling. So tonight, before you sleep, do the practice. Imagine your desire fulfilled. Not the desire itself, but a scene that implies it's already done. Feel it real. Feel the naturalness of it. Feel the relief, the satisfaction, the joy of having it, and let that feeling be the last thing you impress before you drift off to sleep. Your subconscious will take that impression and begin creating while you sleep. It will orchestrate synchronicities. It will arrange timing. It will bring the right people, the right opportunities, the right circumstances. Not because you figured out how, but because you impressed the end result and trusted the process. And tomorrow, catch yourself in the act of creating. Notice what you're assuming. Notice what you're impressing. And gently, without judgment, redirect to the assumption that serves you, the feeling that uplifts you, the belief that empowers you. This is the work. This is the secret. This is the invisible ingredient that creates everything. You started this video searching for something outside yourself, a technique, a secret, a missing piece. But what I've shown you is this. The secret was never hidden. It's been operating inside you every moment of your life. Your subconscious mind is the invisible ingredient. It's the architect building your world. It's the soil growing your seeds. It's the creative force manifesting your assumptions, and it's been working perfectly all along, creating circumstances that match whatever you've been impressing into it. You don't need to become someone else to change your life. You don't need to acquire new powers or special gifts. You just need to stop impressing the wrong ingredients into the only force that's actually creating your reality. No more fighting yourself. No more exhausting willpower. No more trying to force change from the outside. Just conscious impression, feeling your desire fulfilled, assuming it's already true, and allowing your subconscious, connected to infinite intelligence, to create the bridge between your imagination and your reality. This is the life available to you. Not someday. Not when you're worthy enough, or ready enough, or healed enough. Right now. This moment. Because you already have everything you need. The invisible ingredient is already flowing through you, waiting for your conscious direction. So direct it. Impress it. Feel it. Assume it. Live from it. And watch your world transform from the inside out. If something in this video shifted for you, if you felt a moment of recognition, if you felt the grip of fear loosening even slightly, leave a comment and tell me. Not for me, but for you. Speaking your realization aloud impresses it deeper into your subconscious. It makes it more real. It strengthens your commitment to this new way of creating. And if you want more of this work, if you want to continue exploring how your subconscious creates your reality, if you want to go deeper into these principles and practices, subscribe to this channel. I'll keep sharing what I've learned, what I've witnessed, what I know can change your life from the inside out. Thank you for trusting me with your time and attention. Thank you for being open to these ideas, for considering that maybe, just maybe, you're far more powerful than you've been led to believe. Thank you for being willing to take responsibility for your creative power, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it means acknowledging that you've been unconsciously creating circumstances you don't want. That acknowledgement is the beginning of transformation. Because once you see the invisible ingredient, once you understand how it works, once you feel the power of conscious impression, you can never go back to unconscious creation. You're awake now. You're aware. You know the secret. And the secret is simply this. Your subconscious mind accepts whatever you impress upon it with feeling and faithfully creates circumstances to match. That's it. That's the whole secret. Simple but profound. Easy to understand, but requiring practice to master. So go now. Go impress something beautiful into that magnificent creative force you call your subconscious mind. Impress health if you need healing. Impress abundance if you need provision. Impress love if you need connection. Impress peace if you need rest. Impress purpose if you need direction. Whatever you need, impress it with feeling into your subconscious tonight before you sleep. And then trust it. Trust the invisible ingredient to do what it does best. Create. Manifest. Orchestrate. Arrange. Synchronize. Your subconscious is listening right now. It's always listening. It's already accepting these words, these ideas, these possibilities. And if you've truly heard what I've shared today, something has already shifted in you. Some old assumption has loosened. Some new possibility has taken root. Water it. Feed it. Impress it every day. And watch it grow into the life you've always known was possible but couldn't figure out how to create. The invisible ingredient is yours. It's been yours all along. Use it wisely. Use it consciously. Use it with faith and feeling. And watch your world transform from the inside out. You're not broken. You're not blocked. You're not limited. You're a conscious creator, learning to consciously direct the most powerful force in your psychology. And that changes everything.